Parthasarathi at Synergy Veterinary Behavior in Portland, Oregon. For those of you who may not know, we are a behavior only veterinary practice. We work with dogs, cats, birds, and their families to help reduce behavior issues and help these animals who have loud emotions be a little bit calmer and a little bit more collected. So something that we do a lot of is working with pets who have behavioral concerns, but I want to talk today about things that you can do with children and pets to prevent behavioral concerns from coming up. And we were talking about this as a team because this is kind of back to school season for a lot of our kids. And it's a fun thing to talk about, and it's a fun topic to talk about in general. So today, what I'd like to do is talk about kids and dogs, some of the things that are important to consider as a parent, how much of what activities can be done for with children at different ages, and how to just help you and your dog have the best relationship and create and foster that best relationship as possible with your child. First off, dogs and kids, they're kind of like a little bit like peanut butter and jelly, right? They get along quite well with each other. And in the vast majority of cases, that's true. Most dogs and children do get along very well. Um, it's always important, though, to remember that what constitutes tolerance, what a dog will tolerate, is not always what the dog feels comfortable with. And most dogs out there tolerate a whole lot more than we give them credit for. So, the first thing that I want you to think about as both a parent and a pup owner is be thinking about, does my dog actually enjoy the interactions that they're having with my child? So if you see your dog going up to your child and having a loose, happy body language, if you see your dog um, going out and hanging out with your child, if you see your dog playing with your child, those are great indications that maybe they do have a good positive relationship with them. But we also need to watch for things that maybe indicate that the dog is uncomfortable. So, for example, if your dog is laying down and the child approaches and they get up and walk away, or if your child hugs your dog and your dog starts leaning away from them, or turning their head away, those are some possible indications that your dog is uncomfortable. Um, of course, if we see your dog is growling, showing their teeth, baring their teeth, snapping, those are all very clear indications that your dog's uncomfortable. And your dog was probably showing some of these other signs that I was talking about before they got to the growling and snapping stage. So it's really important for parents to be watching those interactions closely between your children and your dogs. Um, because we want to make sure that those relationships stay as positive as they can be. So that, and because sometimes, depending on how old the child is, there are periods of the child's life which can be really challenging for dogs. And we want to really support the dog, not just the child, but we want to support the dog through this really challenging time. Because not all dogs are going to automatically see their new family member as a member of the family. Um, a lot of the clients that we work with, the dog was there before the child was. And so it's really a big shift for the dog to go from being sort of the center of attention to now not having that attention anymore and having a lot of change with this new little bundle that's shown up. So thinking about that, and for those of you who may have just joined, I'm going to be talking a little bit about child and dog safety, some activities that we can do, management strategies we have to keep in mind. So I was just talking about just the fact that dogs and kids can get along great, but then also we need to be aware of the body language signs of your particular dog or your individual dog to show whether or not they actually are enjoying the child approaching. Are they enjoying the being petted by the child? Are they enjoying um, when they're getting treats from the child? Are they enjoying if the child is trying to hug them? Some general rules of thumb, I would say, are if you have a child, especially a young child, any child under like 10, I strongly recommend that they are not around dogs unsupervised. And that's not because I think that dogs are going to be bad or children are going to be bad. It's just that things happen that are unpredictable. And what we do know is that the vast majority of bites do occur to children within the house two children happen to from the dogs within the house. And we also know that at least 77% of those bites are preventable. So if we can prevent those bites from happening, we're going to have a much happier relationship between the dogs and the children. And that is involves getting a hold of what's going on, getting ahead of any problems that might be happening. Um, so we want to make sure that the kids and the dog are always supervised together. You don't ever want to leave them unsupervised together, especially young children, because young children also are going to be likely to move quickly. They're going to be likely to grab at things, including the dog. They're likely to move in unpredictable ways that can be really frightening for dogs. Um, and then we want to have a place that the dog can go to that they can feel safe, because they may, just like, maybe you have a long day and then you come home and maybe you don't want to be playing tag with your 4-year-old child who's been waiting all day to see you. Same thing with the dogs. They may not be interested in playing all the time or hanging out with the kids all the time. So giving them a place to go away and enjoy themselves and hang out is really important. It's also important to think about the dog's physical health, because if you have a dog who maybe is old and arthritic, their patience might be a lot less than a dog who is younger and more playful. If you have a dog who's painful, they're going to have less tolerance. If you have a dog who maybe has changes in their vision or changes in their hearing or changes in other senses or endocrine changes, that may cause them to not be as tolerant as they might have been when they were younger. So that's also really important to keep in mind. And they may not want to play so much. Um, we also want to think about some general rules of thumb as far as how the kids and the dogs should interact with each other. So my rules of thumb when I'm working with the dogs is and kids are um, avoid hugging, kissing, face-to-face interactions with dogs. The vast majority of dog bites happen to the face, and to extremities. And with children, what happens is that they're coming in to hug or kiss their dog, and they're right at face level. So it's very challenging for these dogs in that situation, and just what is closest to them if a bite does occur. Avoid face-to-face contact. Avoid hugging and kissing, because the vast majority of dogs actually don't like that. Also, thinking about what are age appropriate games for dogs and for kids. For example, for toddlers, 4 years of age and under, we can do various games with the dogs, which require adult supervision but are really safe and really fun. So, for example, you might have a game of catch or game of toss where the child tosses the ball and then the parent picks up the ball, gives it back to the child, and the child tosses the ball again. That can even be done on the other side of a baby gate. The child could toss the ball over the baby gate. Um, if you have a child or a dog who enjoys finding things, you can play hide and seek. Hide and seek is one of my favorite games for kids to play, because because it's a lot of fun, first off, but it's just a great way for helping with bonding between the child and the dog. So that is just a really fun way for kids um, to bond. And with a toddler, 1 to 3 years old, um, maybe the parent or caregiver goes ahead and puts a treat under the cup and is there with the baby, and then maybe the baby points to the cup and the dog finds it. So that could be a fun thing as well. Um, Perhaps doing like a read to the dog sort of activity where the toddler is on the other side of a baby gate, or maybe in a parent's lap, or maybe in a high chair, and they're reading and they can read out loud. So this is a great way for them to practice reading or practice telling stories, and they can tell these stories to their dog. Um, and that can be actually a great thing to help facilitate learning and facilitate reading. As a segue, one of my previous dogs, Sita, was actually a dog who was involved with the Read to the Dogs program here in the St. John's Public Library. And it was really cool to hear about how there were children who every week they would come specifically to sit and read to her. And they were always really uncomfortable about reading to any adults or reading to anybody else. But if they were there with her, they felt a lot more comfortable and a lot more willing to explore reading. So this is, I think, would be a really cool activity for people to do in their families as well to help facilitate reading for their kids. Um, Something else that you could potentially, as an adult, you may be able to do is teaching them how to brush gently, teaching them how to pat gently. The nice thing about a brush is that it's not them directly touching the dog, and if you teach how to brush gently, that can be a skill that they can use as they get older as well. When thinking about interactions as an adult, when thinking about interactions, it's really important to remember that children are going to mimic how you interact with your dog. Kids are watching you, even even though you may not be aware of this, and this is something that I see time and time again. That adults might be hugging and kissing the dog on the head because that's what their dog feels comfortable with them doing it, but then their kid tries to do it and the dog's not comfortable. So that's something that's important to keep in mind as well. Excuse me. So if you're just joining us, we're talking about kids and dogs. We talked about some activities that young children can play, with little toddlers. Um, excuse me. Gotta have some Dutch here. For 5-year-olds, like preschoolers, simple structured games with guidance, like tossing treats, maybe setting up small obstacles like a tunnel or a hula hoop that the dog can go through, maybe giving them treats or tossing treats for them to encourage them to go through those hoops. Those obstacles can be a lot of fun. Hide and seek, again, a really great one. Um, so those are some examples for things that you can do with younger children. And then older kids, maybe like between 5 and 10, we can start thinking about we can start getting them to think about actual trick training or actual cues that are more useful day to day or that's used more often. So cues like sit or lay down. Thinking about cues like shake or spin or high five, those sorts of cues that are really fun games for kids. Once the kids are old enough to understand how if they ask their dog to do something, their dog does something, they can give a treat, then it opens up a whole world for them as far as how they can interact with their dog. And you can start off with tricks that the dog already knows, because when they start off with tricks that the dog already knows, they're going to be more likely to perform them. And that's really reinforcing for the kid because the kid's like, oh, cool, I did it. And then the dog gets reinforced as well. So I think that's always a really great thing to do. And then once once your kid gets the hang of it, then start getting them to teach the dog new tricks. Teaching tricks is a really fun, low pressure way of kids and dogs bonding together. I know when I was a kid, one of the most fun things I did was teaching my dog, who is a Sheltie mix, working on teaching him to jump through a hoop. So and that's it's not something that you do every day, but it was something that was just fun and different, and he really enjoyed it. So I think that things like that can be really fun, and kids can be really creative also. Maybe have them run past you what they want to do, because sometimes they can be a little bit too creative. But they can come up with some amazing ideas of how to do training um, with dogs as well as other species. Scent games where kids maybe hide treats around the yard or around the house and the dog has to find it. Um, Maybe loading puzzle toys, maybe teaching some basic agility. So these are all things that an older kid can start doing. Remembering to teach children to use calm voices and gentle hands. Remember that they shouldn't be grabbing at the dogs, scolding the dogs. Remember that they're going to mimic what you do, so be really aware that be be sure to set a role model for what your child is going to do. Um, and then watch the dog for behaviors and signals. So if your dog is starting to show signs that they're worried, if they're starting to lick their lips, if they're starting to pant, if they're starting to look away, when your child is asking them to do something or trying to play with them, then that can indicate that your dog is a little bit uncomfortable and maybe it's a good time to stop the game. And for smaller dogs, Remember to teach kids to avoid just going and picking them up. Same with puppies. We want to avoid just scooping them up because that can be really scary and that can lead to snapping as well. So, teaching kids to um, ask you if a puppy needs to be picked up for any reason, and then teaching them a way that you can cue or let the puppy know that you're going to pick them up or that someone's going to pick them up, so that it's not something that's scary for this puppy. Um, so those are some ideas of things that you can do for both making things safer for kids and dogs, and some ideas of games that you can play with your kid and dog as well. Um, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at info@synergybehavior.com, or on our contact form on the website at synergybehavior.com, or our phone at 503-336-1202. Our trainers are very well versed in working with children and dogs of different ages. So there's going to be a lot of options there for you to help really build that bond and solidify that bond between you and your child, or excuse me, your child and your dog. If you have a situation where you're not sure that your child and dog are getting along, or you're seeing aggressive behavior with your child, towards your child from your dog, that's not an immediate deal breaker, but you do need help. So please reach out to us and we can help you with that, and talk to you about what your options are. So um, that is my talk for today. I hope that you got some little pearls and nuggets out of that. And feel free to please ask questions afterwards. We'll be watching and we'll be very happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thanks for joining me. And until next time, take care, everybody. Bye bye.